Okay, so I'll start by kind of going over my kind of concept around storytelling as a design process, and then we'll go into doing some writing on our own, having like a quiet like 20 or 30 minutes to do some writing, and then um, eventually sharing stories with each other. So this kind of came out of conversations with Matthew Sue, who's on the call here. Um, and we've been thinking about the difference between top-down and bottom-up approaches to design, and a lot of things in general. Like education has bottom-up and top-down approaches of like bottom-up, you might be learning a bunch of like small things and then putting them together over time, and top-down learning, you might have like a project that you're building and you have X and Y things that you need to learn for that project. And so you're like learning top-down. But with design, a lot of times we design things top down where we we start at like the big overall concept. So if you're designing a building, for example, you might start by like figuring out what the overall structure might look like, and then you might go down into the smaller details of what individual like um, hallways or something looks like, and then eventually you get down to the rooms and um, like furniture arrangements. But I feel like sometimes when you're designing something top down like this, it creates a lot of assumptions about what the kind of final like bottom parts of this are. So like if you're designing a building top down, you're assuming certain kinds of room structures, you're assuming certain kinds of like environments that you're building. Whereas if you're designing something bottom up, perhaps it's more like Christopher Alexander's pattern language, where maybe you'll be uh, experimenting with different room arrangements and then figuring out what feels good. And I feel like this bottom up approach to design is a very useful concept. And I've been trying to figure out different approaches to designing systems from the bottom up. And one of the things that I've discovered is that writing stories can be a very useful process. And so recently we've been experimenting with writing small stories of like experiences in, say, if we're designing some like future education system where we're like writing what the experience of the student will be. Or if we're building an application, we might be writing a story of like how someone is actually interacting with that application. And so the exercise I wanted to get people to do, and tell me if this sounds interesting, is to take like what we're working on during this hackathon, any kind of ideas or concepts we might have, and kind of write a story around that, and write about the experience in using whatever you're building or designing. Um, one technique I've found to be useful in this process is to sometimes write down just a list of like very small little experiences that you'd like to have, or like little serendipitous encounters you'd like to have what you're building create, and then like kind of building it up and like putting together those bits into a more cohesive story.
Can you
I don't
say
know
that
if
last part again?
yeah, so one technique I've been doing is to write down kind of the small units of experience that I'm interested in. And so if there's like kind of interaction I really like, or some like feeling that I want to convey, like trying to figure out those little bits and like kind of combining those together to create a story. I mean, there can be many different ways to write a story, but that's just like one approach I've found to be useful.
I can give one example if you want. Jorge and I have been talking a bit about composable modular interfaces, and one of the kind of concepts that describes this thing is like these interfaces where you're able to kind of pull in UI elements that allow you to view the same piece of information in different ways depending on the situation or question that you're exploring. In addition, also to create interfaces that allow you to author new pieces of information. And so it's kind of an abstract concept. And my goal was to try to write a story that helped give it a little bit more like character, I guess, or describe a specific scenario or a day in the life where like someone might be using this. So the story that I wrote was this. Melody is an organizer for a large group house. Each week, she receives information about what items were purchased that week, what items were consumed, and what items went to waste. She also has information about special meals like Thanksgiving coming up for the following week. Using a constraint-based interface, or composable interface, Melody is able to rapidly prototype custom interfaces to support her in answering logistical questions. She begins by describing an interface to list out each week's list of items purchased, consumed, and wasted in cards. She then adds additional description/intent to highlight the items that were overbought to see if there are any recurring patterns where they could reduce the quantity. She then describes her intent to create a new list for the upcoming week. Once in this new authoring environment, she begins by asking the system to base this new list off of the average quantity for each item over the previous 3 weeks. The system automatically takes into account the special Thanksgiving meal for the coming Thursday and adds additional items to the list for the planned recipes. Yeah, that was kind of like a small experience where like maybe this interface would be useful, and yeah, we can apply this to any project, and I think it would be interesting if people kind of went through it for ideas that they've been exploring so far. Like Azlen was saying, it's useful to start with like some bullet point concepts and then sort of try to find like specific scenarios, and then you can kind of weave those into like a more coherent story together.
Yeah, so I think for the next 20 or 30 minutes, we'll just like kind of quietly go and write some stories and then come back, maybe share them with each other. Anyone want to go first with sharing the story that they wrote?
I could, but it's a little long. So I am probably not going to successfully build this at this hackathon because it's the last week of school. But I wrote 3 stories about how people use browsers to do stuff and to sort through information. And it was really interesting. I liked this writing process because I didn't come up with the problems immediately. I just came up with a person and came up with something they're doing, and then the problems flowed naturally from it. That was just pretty cool. So Curiel is a mountain biker. She's exploring various biking trails on a mountain biking website. She goes to a map near her and opens each trail page near her in a new tab. She then goes through each tab one by one to evaluate the trails. The next day, she's getting ready to go and she's forgotten which is the ones she liked. She has to do that again to find it. If her browsing had a different tab structure, where instead Curiel had queued up each trail page explicitly in one single queue, then she could have sorted through it and pushed the good options to the next queue to reevaluate them after she's seen them all. Reevaluate the good ones. If the browser had remembered this queue, the next day, Curiel would have been able to skip to the last queue she had built and find her shortlist immediately. So that's story 2. Michael is in over his head in a group discussion and is missing some context, so he's gone quiet. He wants to look up the reading he's done yesternight, but still needs to pay attention to the discussion. If his browser history were organized in a tree that showed how he had followed links, then the cognitive load would be low enough that he could do both finding the browser tab he was looking for and paying attention to the conversation. And the last one, when online shopping, Sam, the power user, wants to sort the options for what she can buy by multiple metrics, but doesn't want to make a scraping script custom for each website that sells a version of the thing that they want to buy. Sam wants an easy way to assign values in multiple database columns based off of HTML element IDs, where it's only a few extra clicks for each new website. And that's all of them.
Nice. I like how you are sometimes starting with like the present and exploring the problem from there, and then figuring out like what kind of like solution there might be for that.
I have like a little add-on. Like I have a story about me and bookmarks, because like I have a bunch of different interests in different parts of art, and usually when I make a bookmark, I do add some tags that fit, but sometimes I forget to add a tag, and modifying the bookmarks is kind of annoying. If I could represent them in Venn diagrams, it would probably already be enough.
I'll write that down.
Jorge, do you want to share your story?
Yeah, let me try. I think it's not done, but we'll see how it ends. So imagine you're Robert, a knowledge traveler. You see learning as vagabonding, a form of long-term travel as a way of life. So you are on a lifelong learning journey and enjoy visiting different fields of study along the path towards your destination. As a solo traveler, you like the flexibility of changing routes depending on your interests, but you also enjoy meeting like-minded people along the way and traveling together when you find a common goal. If you stop learning altogether for a while, you start to experience a sort of learning wanderlust, that strong desire to wander and explore the world of knowledge. That's why you're always looking for tools and spaces that let you keep backpacking around your favorite fields of knowledge. With the resurgence of tools for thought, you're now finding better ways to navigate knowledge that help you discover new things to learn, give you recommendations on what to learn next, and keep track of all the trails you have explored. So I really want to hear more about those bike trails.
Yes, I like
Has
the-
anyone thought of a Secret Santa, but for tools for thought? Like you make someone else the tool they want for thinking.
Like,
What's that again?
Like a bunch of people would, just like any other Secret Santa, like there's a game jam going on, but someone would like make a really short description of a tool for thought they want, and then you could like see the misinterpretation of every person. But
like book and app recommendations?
no, as in here's a tool I'd like to have, something simple, and then everyone gets someone they have to make it for. Like they don't make the one they need, they make the one someone else's need. But because they don't really get the problem, there's like a bunch of happy accidents.
That would be a really funny event.
So next
often-
hackathon, yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
It's like a mixing of different people's contexts.
Matt, do you want to go next?
Oh, on that last thing, we could call it the tools for thought telephone.
What do you say, Ethan?
We could call that the tools for thought telephone game. Where in the telephone game, like you said,
Like broken telephone.
yeah.
And tools for that.
I mean, if we had some sort of hosting platform so people don't have to build everything from scratch, it would be fun to see how they can build on top of it instead of having to build everything like servers and stuff. I guess we would get way more tools that way. That'll be like having the workshop, and then you just come to the workshop and build the tools on it.
Yeah, I think actually there is glitch which might actually like work for a certain limited scope of tools.
Glitch?
Yeah, the Remix platform. So it has like hosting, it has all kinds of little things. I know it's pretty flexible, so you might be able to build some stuff on that. I guess I'll link it.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah,
I
fun
found
to
this.
do,
Stop me.
sorry. It'd be kind of fun to do a programming exquisite corpse where you like write like short program and then give it off to someone else and they like add on to it and then they give it off to someone else and they add on to it. Just like keep going and see what happens.
That sounds like waterfall design.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. If you use that as like the brainstorming part, and then you added in an open source element, then you could get kind of the benefits and the chaos, while also getting the benefits of the more like organized, collaborative process. It'd be cool to have that not just for like programming, but also for any other kind of thing. I think back into like younger years in the classroom where they have the game where you say a sentence and then the next person adds on to it and you tell a story as you go. That'd be cool to implement in different creative fields.
Actually, yeah, it'd be pretty cool too if like this storytelling exercise that we were doing, we did it collaboratively where like people started the story and then other people ended it. Storytelling roundtable.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Maybe we can do that later this week because I think we're gonna do another storytelling thing. It could be fun to just mess around with the format.
It's novel, but also we complain about like designers, the waterfall software development, and designers not communicating with programmers.
Cool. I've got another story that I can share that I just wrote. I just pasted a link in the links thing. A while back, I was like discussing with a bunch of friends, like what would the future of cities look like if it was more collaborative, and so I kind of wrote a story around this. So here it goes. Every morning, Jamie goes for a walk in the park that snakes along the river. Various pieces of art created by the community act as waypoints along her walking path. As usual, she turns around at the mural drawn by a local elementary school. On her way home, she begins wondering about how you could blend collaborative multiplayer experiences like Twitch Plays Pokemon with the physical world. She posts a thought on her public life log and gets a couple responses that lead to an interesting discussion. Lucky for her, the people in discussion are all in the same city as her. She asks if they would like to meet up later in the afternoon to chat more at the local learning hub. That afternoon, they meet up at the learning hub and pull out a ream of paper to start sketching ideas. Maybe they could use IoT devices to make various objects in the real world controllable by anyone around the world. They quickly gather a couple of Arduinos and hardware components to prototype their idea. For the first experiment, they try hooking up their lights to a web application where people can change the colors. By the end of the evening, they have a little demo up and live. It's a little chaotic as people change the colors, but a fun day of collaboration nonetheless. That's the end.
Or is it the start?
I love, yeah, I love how this has like a lot of possibility around the expansive and participatory nature. Yeah, of thinking about cities and thinking about places where you can go and talk with other people about what the future might be like there, kind of like we're doing right now.
Yeah, exactly. I think a really important part is kind of like, how do you like move from like, how do you create like these like kind of serendipitous opportunities for people to meet up? So like one of the pieces of the story was like, oh, she posted in her life vlog, and then other people kind of jumped in and responded, and then they kind of moved from that and transitioned into meeting in person. And so how do you create those kind of like opportunities for people to and have the spaces too? Like the learning hub is really important, I think. Like how do you create these spaces for people to meet up in their
like you'd have the learning hub / hackerspace running a Fediverse social media instance or something.
Oh. That could be interesting.
Is let me find the channel. I'm sending a link in the channel.
Okay.
You don't have to check it out now, but it is really cool. It's a project from MIT's Tangible Media Group, and kind of I'm imagining that on a larger scale. And for cities, I mean, imagine if cities could be like dynamic in their structure. Obviously, some things like electrical and plumbing and stuff couldn't change too much, but if it was more like a little bit more like Minecraft, I think that'd be pretty
I was
sweet.
thinking of, imagine if you replaced all roads with just like long stretches of forest.
Whoa.
Every road was just like all forest, and the cars drove like.
You could bike on the side.
So
Yeah,
you're
like
biking
your
and you're driving
analogy
around
to-
cars, and the trees end up navigating or forcing traffic to navigate a certain way.
As in, like, you find a way to replace cars with, like, I don't know, zip lines or bikes, and then and then you just replace all the roads, and you have all this green space, which just like fixes all the shitty parts of cities, especially in places with
future. I'm here for it.
like the worse the city, like New York or like Chicago, the larger the green space. So it actually like flips everything on its head, where the worst cities become the best cities.
A lot of cities are experimenting with that kind of like some cities are experimenting with just like disallowing cars from like the city center or preventing them certain days of the week.
Yeah, I know this is.
I feel like there's a movement toward there's like no cars in cities, or at least much less, and especially in COVID times, most cities were opened up to
only for traveling between cities, not for traveling within cities. You'd use transit.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
That would be nice.
That reminds me a little bit of cul-de-sac temp, if anyone's familiar with that startup. But yeah, it's exactly that. Like cars are only used to travel between cities, but besides that, in the city, it's all walking, biking, and there's a couple of like vehicles for like moving yourself around, but that's it.
Yeah, I'm thinking about moving there actually.
Really? Wow.
That seems difficult for movement disabled people.
This is true. The accessibility components are definitely something that like I hope that more planners are like becoming aware of, since like we're already in like a pretty bad state of not being ADA, like not truly having like a wide range of like accessible spaces in cities.
Yeah, but when I said replacing the roads, I mean you leave the sidewalks and transform them for like you can move with any accessibility vehicle there. So like, it just replaces it. It's kind of just inverts all like the roads and sidewalks dynamic to like the sidewalks are for vehicles, like small narrow ones that don't take up a whole lane, and then you replace and they can also be for emergency vehicles. So.
Yeah,
Cool.
driving cars won't necessarily make it so that you don't have accessibility, right? Like you can actually have it more accessible without cars, likely, because you can
Yeah.
kind of open up the spaces and it's a lot safer and things like that.
Yeah, all the bikers can just park in the forest while the ambulance drives down the sidewalk.
That'd be pretty sick. Actually, speaking of physically disabled people, I think there'd even be a way for them to do that. I don't know why, but what comes to my mind is the Avatar episode in The Last Airbender when they're like flying around the air temple and they have gliders. And
Oh, that's
one
cool.
guy
Yeah.
one guy who's paralyzed from the waist down, he's actually able to like do that the best. And
Pretty cool.
something like that would be cool. Like if there was a really safe and secure zipline thing.
Oh yeah,
where
zip lines like little mechanical elevators.
yeah, like lift elevators for I don't know wheelchairs. Something
I
like
mean,
that.
that's a lot. Like, I'd prefer the sound of zipping people than to like moving trucks. I wonder if you could like have massive zip lines of like for like cargo.
Well, you'd still want trains for heavy cargo.
Yeah, but like I
For
guess
moving people, you don't need them.
But if it was like functional cargo, like for the link I sent, if you were importing a bunch of those, it'd be kind of cool to be able to interact with them as they're going along. So if you
Yeah,
could
you
like
could
control the shape of the thing that was carrying smaller, lighter cargo, or the color of it.
Hmm. The other thing too with the link that you shared, Ethan, it feels like you could make cities very like playful. And you were I think you were the one making the analogy to like Minecraft, and it's like you're walking around and maybe you run into someone else and you ask, "Oh, what are you up to?" And you start kind of like an interesting conversation or collaboration around the thing. That'd be really cool.
So
Yeah.
A lot of people at this hackathon are in Vancouver, and there is a place in Vancouver that's it like has this aspect we're talking about with it's in a neighborhood in what's it called, the North Island. What, man, I forgot the name. And it's got a bike path all along the seawall, and then there's inside of that, more inland, there's a bunch of roads that are like neighborhood streets with townhouses, and they have roads, like there's roads and sidewalks set up, but cars don't drive on those roads. They actually have poles that block cars from getting through, but the cars can still get through, like moving trucks and ambulances and mobility for disabled people. They can pull the poles out of the street, put them on the sidewalk, and then drive through. But then, like, normal traffic can't do that.
Yeah, I think they actually do that at UBC, at the local university in Vancouver. They do exactly that. I used to go to school there, and I think Sav as well went there. But yeah, they do exactly that. Like ambulances can get through, but nothing else can. All the accessibility vehicles. It's very it definitely makes the campus feel much safer. I think about 10 years ago they didn't have that, and cars could drive right through the middle. And I was just looking at Google Maps from when the campus was like that. It's a very different experience. It feels much less safe.
It's called Granville Island, the place I'm talking about.
Oh yes, yes.
I bike there sometimes, and it's very difficult to get through. It's like driving in European cities where there was no road planning when the roads came about, so they all like twist and curve.
I
There aren't
mean,
really any
I'll take twist and curve
areas on gravel.
compared to American cities every day of the week.
Oh.
I mean, it's like American cities are like stampedes of cars cutting through neighborhoods and like highways everywhere. Like a highway going through a city is just insane. Like just cutting right through.
Actually,
Yeah,
in the
there's something
design
really.
of
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say in the design of Vancouver, like they intentionally made a decision to not put a highway through the city, as like was the kind of main narrative around like building cities at the time was like, oh, you have to kind of have this big highway through. A lot of American cities were building those, but Vancouver,
Yeah,
I think it was inspired by writings of Jane Jacobs and
I think it was inspired by some sane
exciting.
human design, a bit, like a little bit of
Yeah.
being humane. Because, I mean, in Israel, all the cities kind of emulated American sensibilities or lack thereof. So,
I've seen some places in Canada where the main superhighways, like Trans Canada Highway, goes through native territory, and there's like no crosswalks on those highways. So if you want to get to the other half of your territory, then you have to cross the highway on foot. It's really sad.
yeah, Canada's track record is about as good as Israel's when it comes to people around here. That's our daily dose of politics, I guess.
What if cities just became? Are you guys familiar with dynamic land? Brett Victor's thing.
Yeah.
What if cities
yeah.
just became like large scale versions of that? What if like the city was the library in spaces where there wasn't collaborative learning and making happening, where the actual like those were the rarities, those were the small spaces. If we just flipped everything on its head.
I want to see that, like, I want to see the example of like the humane, well-designed city that's like the exact opposite of like Dubai in a desert, like somewhere in the Sahara. Just, I want to see that.
There's this place like called Arco Sante. I forget where it is, but I think it's in Arizona or something, or New Mexico. It took a lot of years. It took like, I don't know. Well, it was okay. I'll read this. So, an Italian-American architect named Paolo Soleri basically wanted to create an experimental town with like a bunch of people, and so it was like an arcology experiment where, yeah, the goal is basically to like make a nice, cool community, like well-built stuff with a really cool architecture. But I think the goal, yeah, it's based in a nonprofit foundation called Cosanti, and it's kind of like against consumerism and against like the things taking place around it at the time. So it was very radical in the 70s. It was one of the projects of this like birthed out of the 70s when a lot of people were also thinking about this kind of counterculture stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the city I live in, Arad, it was initially designed in such a way. So what they did is they built a bunch of like crappy homes for the architects on the top of the hill in the middle of a desert, and they had to live there for a while they were planning. Like I think they lived there for like half a year, and then they built a bunch of buildings which were mostly designed for the wind and heat, to, like with climate considerations, and there was a lot of like common spaces. And I mean, the city had a bunch of like utopian ideas behind it and whatever, but then the Soviet Union collapsed, and a bunch of different practical things made it so the city had to like make homes for like I think 20,000 new people when the population was like 20,000. So like everything like changed. The city planning kind of like felt. It's kind of like if you play SimCity or something, and you start out with like a good idea, and then practical things like force you out of it, and everything gets kind of messy. So it's like the core of the city. You can see a lot of design, and as you get like further out, things kind of melt into like suburban, kind of less directed.
Gladly, we don't have to worry about that with the internet, since the internet's a perfect space.
No, nothing went wrong. We aren't sitting in a platform where things might have gone a little wrong.
What even is centralization? Like, centralization? What's that? Yeah.
Who's asking this question? Oh wait, can you elaborate?
Sorry, I was kidding.
Oh no, it's just a bit of irony here. Talking about like the physical spaces in a digital space that kind of resembles the same idea. Things going a little wrong.
We're all subject to systems of power and control and politics that get translated like and repeated, basically, for better or for worse. Thanks for sharing the stories. I'm actually going to jump out. Oh, hey, Gray.
Oh no.
Oh no, he immediately was like, no, I'm leaving.
I was
okay.
actually, I was starting to like I started writing a story irrespective of this, which does actually go on the theme of tools for thought, of where like the main character is gifted a massive archive of a relative's like how do you even pronounce the Zettel whatever word? Yeah, so he gets one and he starts exploring it, and like that's supposed to be interactive, and you explore someone else's ideas and like and a bit of like a horror element to it where it's kind of like oppressive because it makes you start thinking like someone else. Like, what does that do? I mean, like also the idea of one of them written in a manipulative way where it's not entirely like for the person writing it but for the person reading it, which is I guess a bit like I don't know. You can like subvert the concept. You can. It's cool. I'm still thinking what it could lead to because it's supposed to be like a mystery horror kind of thing.
That's cool.
Great. Do you have any stories about the general topic of storytelling as a design process? I assume that's the word after the P. Sorry, I'm singling you out. I know Gray from school. We go study design. So I like.
Sorry, yeah,
imagine.
I was situating myself with all of the Bluetooth audio sources. Nothing off top that I can think of. I was just hopping in to hear what people are talking about, but I'm done to think a little more before I contribute.
AMA. No, I'm just kidding. I was gonna bring up like, so I'm sure you guys have heard of like Sidewalk Labs, and sort of like this relates to our other points about different types of cities and whether they're organic or more grid-like, whether they're made for the car or for the pedestrian, and what qualities about. Obviously, like we all want like better quality of life, and it would be great to have more people kind of thinking and contributing to the spaces where we could be actively participating in shaping our cities. But actually, those kind of concepts like relate a lot to like civic life and the professions themselves, which like both civic life and the professions of architecture, urbanism, placemaking, etc. Both civic and professional lives have like these interesting, barriers, or like I would say, barriers to entry or gatekeeping type of like behaviors around them. So I'd be curious to know like where, or if you like know any ways of sort of being a part of something that has been something you've directly joined or participated that has sort of given you hope, or if you've known about other people who sort of participate in like city making in any like loose kind of concept, I guess.
No, I've gone to some like architecture meetups that is like intended for architects.
That's
What-
pretty
what
cool.
about-
Where
just,
is
like-
that?
What about a movement for squatting in like
What?
a ghost town or something, like a ghost city in like China? That'd be funny.
I don't know if squatting in China would be the safest life decision.
We could get a
I mean, if
decentralized.
you're feeling
organization.
generous with your organs, I guess.
Oh.
What if we pulled off some kind of like adventure shared structure thing between different houses? So you could buy, like, you could have a decentralized place to buy property, and a handful of people would actually pay for the real estate. Everyone would pay into it like Patreon, and it would pay for the rent or whatever. And then anyone who's interested could pay in a certain amount, and then be able to start at one place, work on something there, creative project at the first house, and then after a set amount of time, like 3 months, they'd move on to the next one, which would already have a creative project set up, and then they would keep being able to hop between them. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to think about like what do we really, what can the conception of home be? Does it have to be in one place, or can like home kind of be your city, and like you can kind of be flexible in like being in different parts of the city, something.
I think that comes back to Matt's comment on the learning hub in the city, and I think it was Lev who made a contrast on the opposite direction. Like instead of having a learning hub inside the city, having a learning hub as the city, and then just places to sleep, to crash. I guess it would be more difficult for families, but at least for these type of like learners, you wouldn't even be thinking about like having your shelter, I guess. Just like learning as much as you want until you need to crash, and then just find a pillow. But I don't see it as a long-term thing, but still, it would be fun to try for a while, even between different cities like this.
I wanna grow food, and my conclusion for the most efficient form of growing your own food is getting a pipeline of attracting locusts in a desert into a massive pond where you grow fish and farm the fish on a organic locust diet.
Is that mostly to like also deal with the locust and epidemics?
Yeah, I mean, if you grow what attracts them, you might be able to take the heat off other forms of farming.
You can also feed like chickens and ducks, I think, more easily than
Yeah.
fish.
Yeah, that too. Like, it depends, but yeah, I mean, my cat loves eating them, and it's so creepy when grasshoppers start like morphing like anime villains into locusts. Like, I didn't know that happened until I saw it happening and read up. Just walking through the desert, suddenly you see all the grasshoppers, which are usually just quiet, like making extremely loud clicking sounds, like you can't hear anything else. Like you can't hear someone speak; they make so much sound, and then they just like fly out and join. I don't know the massive hive mind of nanobots, which are locusts.
Yeah, it's like a behavioral shift.
Did you say
Not
nanobots?
even like a different species.
Yeah, but they also physically morph in some really like fascinating ways.
Locust problems are predictable by the year. There is 2 species of locust that are adjacent. One of them comes every 13 years and one comes every 17. And they picked those
Isn't that
numbers
cicada?
because... Oh, okay. They picked those numbers because they're primes, so they barely ever overlap with each other.
I mean, I think also climate change is making locusts more of a problem. So if you can capitalize on that for food production.
The die-off of the bird population has been a huge help for the locusts, because especially in North America, people have been hugely reducing the bird population over the past 200 years. House cats are one of the things that reduces the population significantly, especially in cities.
An interesting thing here in the city is that the birds that there's an invasive species that took over. They seem a lot smarter than what was here before, and they don't seem to fall for cats at all.
It's happening with crows for us in Canada.
Like we have crows here too, but we have I don't know what it's called, but they make like 1,000 different sounds that sound like every bird, and they look out for each other and walk around in packs and
Cool.
avoid cats.
Nice. I always find a lot of people are interested in cities and like how our cities can be made better, but there's like not really any clear-cut ways to go about being involved or like taking part in building the cities of the future.
I mean, a lot of that has to do with like the inherent corruption and like complex of the way construction gets done and like the politics behind it, the regulation. I mean, making a city is inherently a very destructive thing on the environment, so it makes sense that it's like wrapped up in all that. I mean, I'd say, like I'm not sure if any areas are better than deserts for making cities, but you're still destroying a lot of wildlife and messing with environments in really massive ways. An interesting note about cities is how I was looking around and thinking about how recycled water would probably be very like straightforward if thought of in advance, and but it wasn't. So all water gets mixed and sent into the sewers, even though like when you think about water in a shower and in the sink, the percent of like pollutants to water is kind of low, but you mix that with septic waste and that's like a hazard. But walking around this desert city, you see little lines of leaking sewage on bad infrastructure, and like the green is plants, and you see rows of trees that just spring up wherever the sewer is dysfunctional, and that's almost everywhere. It's like these like rays of green light, which is I think it's kind of sad because if we actually intentionally designed our water system to divert and grow food, maybe a city could actually feed itself.
I'm hopping out, but thanks, and enjoy the rest of your days, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for coming. thanks to everyone who came and wrote stories and participated. That was really fun. Sorry, I didn't actually write my own story. I was busy talking in this room.
We're gonna share them somewhere.
Could should make a storytelling.
And people can try doing it on their own throughout the week, and then we can also do a collaborative one at the end of the week.
Does anyone here have like a good grasp of compression, like and the math and whatever the code?
Nope.
I was like wondering if
You mean like
like compressing video and photos or whatever. Like,
oh, yeah, sort of.
if
I'd have a vague understanding.
yeah, so if you have a peer-to-peer network of and you know like for sure that the same copy of a video is split between a bunch of people, but it has to be compressed among all of them. Could you scheme the compression, like if they can all communicate peer-to-peer?
So you want to have a peer-to-peer stored video that's stored in a compressed form, but you all want to watch it at the same time?
No, like I want it so if someone wants to download the video, he's accessing different compressions from everyone. Like, and if you want to like
Well,
decompress,
you could have
like-
the torrent service be storing a zip file rather than storing the original.
yeah, no, but what I mean is if everyone has like a different form of lossy compression, could you rebuild like a lossless one or something? Like, could you get? Is there any advantage in like having
Is everyone storing the full video file or only parts of it?
the full thing, but like everyone can compress it differently, like but
Oh,
informed on like the number of people, and
do you want people to be able to watch their own video at their own like favorite quality and
offline.
without having any problems with like offline?
No, like it would be like a streaming where you only need like a really shitty version of the local file, and that lets you access everyone else's, and then you just like you get like hints at completing at like decompressing, like as in you can, as if
I don't see how this is better than torrenting.
I'm not sure if it is. Because I don't really have a good grasp of compression.
Right. So if everyone has a lossy compression, then you can, and you want to like reconstruct the lossless version, it's very, very difficult because it's likely that everyone lost the same things if they're all using the same compression algorithm. So if they're using, but if you created a custom compression algorithm that compresses each person's video differently,
yeah, that was the idea.
Then that's basically equivalent to a torrent, except it's split up differently, where like information, instead of splitting it up by like sections of the file in the disk, you split it up by different parts of each frame of the video, which I think would be extremely technically difficult.
Yeah, would there be any advantages, or am I just like?
I don't think so, because people, like, let's say you want to have the people, each person who has a copy of the video wants to be able to watch the video without having to download something from someone else, like offline, but they don't want to store the entire like 4K 120 FPS video on their device, but they still want to contribute to making the high quality video available to other people.
Yeah.
So what you would have to do is have each person store like you would split the video up. So let's say it's 4K, and you want to split each each group of 4 pixels in the 4K would become 1 pixel in the compressed version, and then you would have 4 different people store one corner of that section, but the video would look terrible on each of those 4 people's screens. So because the normal compression from 4K to 1/4 of that to 1/2 of that size, or yeah, 1/4 would average the 4 pixels,
Yeah,
whereas this would have to.
You know the type of compression which has artifacts on, let's say, patterns.
Yes.
Isn't
Yeah, I think it would be worse artifacts.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't get much benefit over just using normal torrent.
Yeah, but I was thinking more of like the same way, like between frame data. Like, can you hold some? Like, can you basically have hints to decompression,
Yes.
split around?
There is a video format that's in like very beta, a compression format that's designed for those like animation styles, like I don't know, science YouTube videos where they have like title cards and like nice clean geometric animations. So what it does is instead of compressing stuff into pixel by pixel, it compresses it into like geometric shapes using SVG animations. So if you had a totally different video format that relies on a different thing for than pixels, it would be you could make quite a high quality thing, but it also wouldn't be very interoperable with other video players.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Do you, by chance, have a good understanding of Fourier analysis? That's
Which analysis? Sorry.
Fourier transforms and all that.
No. I know that that's the way that multiplication is done on CPUs nowadays.
I mean, it's the big like it's the fundamental thing for sound and like digital audio stuff. And you can also reconstruct images with sine waves too. And I was looking, every once in a while look for is someone representing 3D models with sine waves and cosines, and I don't find it. Recently I did see 2 papers that came out, I think this year and last year.
That does sort of exist. You would model I don't know, a mustache using a whole bunch of like
the
triangles, but then you would compress it to like a 50th or 100th that many triangles, but then have a function for the GPU so that it doesn't actually display each triangle itself. It like reconstructs the original sort of, but in an approximate way using the angle between different triangles.
I've been looking for a 3D generalization. I saw 2 attempts, but they're really recent. I don't know how. It looks like an interesting field. Because, I mean, like, I don't know. There's a bunch of different ways of representing 3D stuff, and it feels like, let's say for point cloud data, it feels like you should be able to get away with turning all that massive data into, let's say, just a bunch of sine waves.
Like a JPEG for 3D.
Yeah. The point cloud data, I mean, all the 3D data is nasty, but like for photogrammetry is something I might want to get into because like the place I live in is full of props that they don't sell on digital markets. So you can digitize that, make a good passive income. Like there's some crazy rocks and rock formations around here. I could spend a year or 2 just taking photos every time there's an overcast day and build up a really big library. Thinking of doing that. Like the landscape here is like really alien. Like there's these boulders that look like UFOs that like everywhere.
So format-specific compression is becoming less useful nowadays that storage is more cheap. Specifically for video, it could be really nice because people stream videos all the time. But then you have, generally we will in the future we'll be wanting to develop compression algorithms that are general for every file type that rather than specific to one file type.
I have a question. Like, has anybody heard the anecdote of having nightmares or weird dreams after consuming hot peppers?
I've heard of that after chocolate, but not after like hot food.
So like I'm just like looking around because I had like a really weird experience and I haven't seen anything about it except for like one like really crappy article and one tweet about some guy injecting capsaicin, which is like, okay, dude, you do you, but I'm not looking for that. But basically, I made some sriracha hot sauce, like fermenting it, and I don't even remember trying it. I think it was just like on my hands because I didn't wear gloves, and I went to sleep, and then I woke up an hour later with like after like 7 or 6 different lucid dreams, like and false awakenings. Just like they weren't bad, but they were just like absurdly lucid and misleading. Just like I feel like.
So would you qualify that as a dream hallucination rather than just a dream?
It was more of a dream hallucination. It felt like a combination. Like I was far more convinced I was awake. Like I woke up in bed and called someone on Discord and told them about how crazy my dream was. And then I woke up for real and did that again. Like it was like insane. And then the next day I asked my mom if she had seen weird dreams and she told me about a really, really weird dream. So like it was I haven't managed to perfectly replicate it. I've got a few theories because like it might be actually just fumes because I noticed after trying it my eyelids were really like active even when I had them closed. Like it felt like I was in REM while I was awake, like physically, but I wasn't dreaming or hallucinating or anything. But the reason I'm interested in it is one, I read something about treating PTSD with like different types of sleep therapy and whatever, but more the learning side of dreams, because if you can cause rapid fire dreams in like during a nap with like a substance, you could like you could enhance motor skills and retention by like maybe an order of magnitude. So that'd be cool. So
what you're saying,
everybody make sriracha and try and get there, I guess, if you want.
I'm reading online. It does look like capsaicin can cause hallucinogenic effects if you have a lot of it.
Yeah, but I looked around and there was like one paper about a theory about inflammation while digesting it, and it felt off. Like it didn't seem very likely. Like there, I think there's something else going on, but
wait. So just to make sure I have things right, you're telling me you more or less got high off of fermented sriracha?
yeah, I made it. I went to sleep. I woke up an hour later after feeling like I was just like stuck in the dream world for like days. It's really crazy.
So there's theories that are very like not confirmed at all because it almost never happens. So when firstly I'm combining two ideas. You get a lot of endorphins when you have spicy stuff. It acts as a painkiller to the capsaicin. So your brain releases a lot of it. And then secondly, when people have near-death situations, they also get a similar release of that plus even more different chemicals than just endorphins. And then there have been a small number of people, this isn't really medically documented, that say they have lived like years or weeks of perceived time in the moment of their near-death experience.
Yeah, so who wants to do that with a skill they're trying to learn? That's my pitch basically. Like, I guess it'd be cool to crowdsource different experiments with homemade fermented sriracha. I mean, lucid
There
dreams
are
in general
actual
seem a really powerful tool in the learning toolkit. Go about it right.
There is actual like biohacking amateur research, like non-academic, into different drugs enhancing your skills and thought. Like the most common one is modafinil, which you can get in like third world countries for cheap, but it's expensive in North America.
Yeah, but like I feel like dreams are like the loophole where if you can chemically enhance dreams after you have like mastery over dreams, or also
Right.
meditation. Like if you can combine, like I know
I've researched lucid dreaming and meditation combined. I haven't done it, but I've read accounts. So
I tried once.
there are people who put EEG machines on while meditating, and they have meditated into lucid dreaming. So specifically, meditating people who are really good at meditating are able to fall asleep and maintain awareness so that they immediately start lucid dreaming when they fall asleep. And you can measure this on EEG. Apparently, meditating and lucid dreaming is the same brain waves on the EEG. EEG is a very crude detector compared to actual brains, but it's pretty good. And then there's also people who lucid dream regularly do report that their sleep when they're lucid dreaming is not very restful. So I think that trying to be aware and learning in your sleep is not necessarily a good idea because you aren't actually getting many of the benefits of sleep.
Yeah, but another example is you can take a nap, and if you can, like a lot of people do experience more REM while they take a nap, and it doesn't really mess that much with your circadian rhythm if it's relatively short. So, like if you can enhance a nap window for learning, I think motor skills are the best like thing to try and tackle.
Have you seen Learning How to Learn, the Coursera course?
Yeah, I got through like a week of it, and
Same.
I got this.
They mentioned a thing where many of the foremost intellectuals of the like 1800s and earlier were had a technique where they'd be sleepy and think about something very difficult that they were having trouble seeing the big picture, and then they'd like fall asleep with something in their hands so that when they fall asleep they drop it and it wakes them up, and then they'd write down what they were thinking about.
I know
and they'd get cool ideas.
And I know
they call it the hypnagogic nap.
I know Tesla claimed to like have basically world accurate simulations in his dreams, which I'm totally up for believing.
I mean, he could just visualize things in the real world. He didn't even have to dream.
Yeah, but I feel like he probably had a little more flexibility in his dreams. Like, if you can visualize things in the real world, then you probably have extra superpowers in your dreams.
Yeah.
So there was one more thing. I mean, I've had some experiences drawing in dreams. There was an annoying one where I was trying to play music in dreams, and my brain like pulled a fast one on me where I went through a train station that had a piano, and I sat down, and then my train arrived, so I had to get up.
I recently tried to write my name in a dream because someone I was introducing myself in a dream, and I was like, "Oh, I'll just write my name for you." And I started writing my name, but the language centers in my brain were turned off. I could tell that what I was writing was not correct. I couldn't reason about how to spell my name correctly.
Oh, another great application is language learning. When I was learning learning Russian, like pretty quick, I started dreaming in Russian, I felt there was this point where this guy was shouting at me in Russian, like chasing me down a hall, and as I felt like myself getting like kind of exhausted by it, and it's morphed into Hebrew and then into English, which I know the best, and then it kind of like got easier and easier, like letting off.
And I created a storytelling channel, just like people to stories in and discuss stories if people are interested.
That's interesting about hypnagogic naps. It actually reminds me at MIT, I think they made a project. They're trying to make an interface that you can actually communicate signals like with your body while you're in a dream state, or while you're in one of those like hypnagogic dreams, where it's not quite a lucid dream, but it's like you're starting to get a bit of hallucinatory effects. So it's interesting to look at that. Looking at like body interfaces that kind of detect some output that you would want when you're in a lucid dream, so you don't forget everything.
I have a friend who he has like the worst case of narcolepsy ever recorded. He can fall asleep on command within like 3 seconds, no matter what. It's like been measured. I think some researcher who's like the expert on narcolepsy said he's never seen a case anywhere near as bad. So he can basically dream whenever he wants. And, I mean, there's a lot of shortcomings because narcolepsy is quite a problem. But, I mean, you could probably design those interfaces with his help in like 1/10 of the time.
That's a good point. Yeah, it'd be interesting. I don't know if any like central place for this kind of stuff, but I guess in one sense, the whole tools for thought movement is kind of like trying to give us a digital version of what lucid dreams give us when we're asleep.
Yeah, I mean, I really want to explore the whole like mind palace thing, where you design an actual physical space which you go to like multiple times throughout dreams. I've had dreams like years apart with that referenced each other and spaces that didn't exist. So like there's like a drive I took like many times to school, and my dream inserted like a fictitious canyon there, and then years later I saw it caved in, like it was there again. I was like I drove past the like destroyed version of the thing that never existed.
That's really interesting. You know, that makes me think of a theory I have going, which is that dreams are kind of like allegories for our cognition, for like the way we think about things. and that's cool because I've also noticed repeated patterns in my own dreams, and it's interesting thinking that we kind of, because of how spatially we think, dreams almost produce architecture based on all of our like things that we're thinking and feeling and all that.
Yeah, like one thing that bugs me is that like the degree of unintentional, like the percent of like signal to noise in dreams is just like way out of whack. One thing I was thinking is like in an environment that's less stimulating, like a more primitive one, where you don't have any access to much, and you're like a lot of the day is thinking about similar problems for long stretches of time in a more laid back environment. Your dreams are probably like very consistent, and they aren't as random. Like they might be, they'll still be weird, but they'll be more like I think useful. So like I'd say, let's say playing a video game for a few hours and then checking social media will ensure that your dreams aren't as coherent as they could be, no matter what you do.
Interesting. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, I'd say like stimulation, like if you have like one stimulating, interesting pattern of thought during the day, and then nothing else, I'd say there's a pretty high likelihood that's what you'll dream about and solve in the dream state. But if you have like 1,000 of those, it's all like coming at you together. Like it's all being resolved at the same time. I guess go on a long hike and think about one problem and then go to sleep.
I'm looking for an article that talks exactly about this. New evidence for the strange geometry of thought. Yeah.
I guess I'll check that out after I go to sleep.
Yeah.
5 is the next sleep cycle window, and I'm on 3% battery anyway.
Have you heard of Prathiash on Twitter?
Who?
Prathiash.
Nope. I don't
He's
think so.
like, let me find him. He's like one of the coolest people in this Tools for Thought thing. I'll send you his thing in the links chat.
Has anyone read the making a note-taking system in Vanilla Vim article?
No, I haven't heard of it.
Like I was thinking about like which platform thing to use, and then I saw that and I was like, yes. And now I just have text files and I like them. But there are some shortcomings.
I was reading that it seems nice, but it needs more to be worth it, because a lot of the benefits of Vim is you can have specific formatting within your files that lets you sort through stuff in a very efficient way. And he does that with the file paths with FG to immediately open another file. But GF, but like it being purely text notes means it isn't really worth it to do it in Vim.
I miss images, but there are for programming it's really nice. Like if you're dealing with text data, then that note-taking system is just kind of perfect. I'll probably move to something HTML based, because I mean hyperlink kind of fit. I've been using Pollen for HTML, so making a function that creates back trivial. And I wish there was like a good middle ground between browser and terminal, but it's like there's a link there. Probably learn how to make some UI in like pure C to make something.
I saw pretty cool Sublime text plugin that was auto completing a bunch of HTML stuff, where you would write a selector in CSS and then it would convert that into a bunch of HTML tags that selector in CSS would describe. So you were able to write HTML stuff without typing the angle brackets and other annoying stuff
think,
like
what
closing.
Pollen does. Pollen is a dialect of Racket, so it's a scheme Lisp thing. So S expressions and HTML are basically the same thing. So you have HTML as a native data structure, so you can generate it. You make macros that generate it and generate code that generates it, and lots of custom functions and shenanigans ensue. Pretty nice. I mean, I haven't been utilizing it to its fullest, but like you can have a footnote tag, and then you just do that, and it builds it out. Like, I guess
People are crazy, man.
it's a bit of a weird way of dealing with the boilerplate problem, but I think I like it for what it is. If the guy who wrote it also wrote a book called the book, like Pollen, the book is a program. So he made it for making books and outputting to multiple formats, but it's really powerful. So anyone wants to make a website that's also a book, check that out. I guess I'll link it tomorrow. And power is almost out. Ooh. Also, sriracha is really tasty, so you guys should definitely make it.
I've been brewing kombucha.
Have you seen the SCOBY things where you make leather out of SCOBY?
That's a silly idea. It's really difficult.
No, I've seen it done like in 2 different instances. It seems pretty effective. I'd say the one thing I'd like to test is making a greenhouse out of SCOBY.
With the walls of the greenhouse being SCOBY
Yeah.
on slats.
Yeah.
It would have to be somewhere where, like the desert, where it won't be damaged by debris.
Yeah, but they might just dry out and crack, so I have my doubts. Like, apparently you can cure them with oil and actually get some decent results, but
What they're nice for is anything you want to build that you know you'll use for a short time and you don't want to deal with garbage. So like boats that float out to sea and then biodegrade. Boats for like not like to float yourself, but to float something across a river.
yeah. I mean, I know that for fiber they're pretty good, like for a rope if you want to, like temporary. What I really want is koji rice, like to add into the bread starter. I think that tastes really cool. There's a cool thing with hot sauce. Like you can actually make it with alcohol, and then it can ferment the alcohol into vinegar, so it adds even more like dimensions. But sriracha is totally worth it because you also use it up really slowly. So you get a lot of bang for your buck. Like you make it once and it lasts for like months potentially, and it still tastes good. Whenever there's like psychedelic art or like trying to represent a dream, it usually is like way cooler than anything I see in my dreams. Oh, see ya.
All right, I'm gonna get focused. So I'll catch y'all around.
Yeah, I probably have to hop off as well. Thanks everyone for coming to the storytelling event and all the discussion afterwards.